Now in this video, I'm going to be covering the concept of functions within Go and how we can use them to better organize our code so that it's more readable and maintainable. Now, in the last few videos, we have been doing all of our programming within the one main function, which, if you'll remember correctly, is the entry point for our Go application within package main. Now, typically, if you are developing Go applications, you want to keep the main function as small as possible. It's meant to act as the entry point to your application and nothing more. So, with that being said, let's take a look at how we can define our own functions that encapsulate some of the logic that we want our application to run. So, let's start off by creating a new function that we're going to call hello world. Now, it's not going to take in any arguments within the parentheses here, and it's not going to return any values. However, it is going to call format.println hello world, and we can then subsequently call this from the body of our main function by typing hello world and then parentheses like so. Cool, so let's save that and then go into the terminal and type go run main.go. And as you can see, the main function is still the entry point for our application, so it executes whatever's in the main function in order. So it starts off with this println statement on line 10. It will then call the hello world function that we have defined here, and in the body of that function we have our fmt println hello world statement, which is then subsequently executed. Now, how do we go about changing the println statement here to possibly say hello and then the name of someone? Well, we could pass this in as a parameter or an argument, and we could say the name, which is the variable that we want to pass in, and then the type of the variable, in this case it's going to be string. We could then modify our println statement and pass in the name variable that we've just created or defined here. And then you'll notice that we now have a red squiggly line underneath our hello world call here, which means it's expecting an argument. So let's add our argument now, which is going to be a string called Elliot. Cool, let's go into the terminal, go run main.go. And as you can see here, the hello world function now takes in the name Elliot and then passes this through to the format.println statement that we've got here so that it prints out hello Elliot. Now, if we wanted to add further arguments to our hello world function, we could do that. And just after the type of the first argument here, we'll then specify the name of the second argument we want to pass in and the type of that argument. In this case, we could do something like the age and the int. We could then do something like fmt println age and then age, like so. Once again, let's update the call we made in the main function and add the age parameter, and let's say 27. Let's run this again. As you can see, hello and age have been both executed successfully using the two parameters that we've passed in. So just a quick tip, if you have multiple parameters of the same type, you can pass them in like so. So I could say age, comma, height for the second parameter, and the Go compiler will accept this as an age of type int and a height of type int. And then we could use this fmt println height and height, like so. Once again, let's update this and we'll say 200. I have no idea what height I am, but I'm sure it's probably around that. Cool, so we've looked at how we can define a function that takes in a couple of parameters of different types and then executes a couple of println statements based on or using those parameters. Now, how can we then define a function that will return a value or multiple values? Well, it's somewhat similar. So let's say we have a function called add total, and this takes in, say, a value a and b, which are of type int, we could then return or specify that the function returns an integer, like so, just outside of the brackets or the parentheses here. And then we could say return a plus b. So let's try and call this now. So add total, and we'll say 2 and 3. And let's assign this to a variable. So total is equal to add total, and then let's format.println total, like so. Again, you'll note that we're using the shorthand variable declaration syntax here to instantiate and assign the total variable here. Let's go into the terminal, go run main.go. And as you can see, the final output here is 5, which is indeed the total of 2 plus 3. Now, as you progress through your journey learning Go, you may see functions that will return multiple values. And the way to specify or create a function that will return multiple values is to update the function signature here. And within parentheses, we will add all of the different types for the return values that we want this function to return. Now you'll see that this is now throwing an error, and that's because we're only returning one integer value. If we wanted to return 2, we could add a comma, and then we could do a minus b, for example, which will return a second int and satisfy the signature here. Now with this in place, you'll notice that we now have an error within the main function, and it says cannot initialize one variables with 2 values, as the add total function now returns 2 values instead of 1. Now, if you wanted to say ignore a value in Go, you could use the underscore, like so, or you could assign this to a new variable, so negative total, for example. We could then print that out. And let's run this once again. Now, as you can see here, we have successfully assigned both total and negative total to the output of add total function, which returns a plus b and a minus b. And within the output of our application, you'll see that it prints out 5, which is the total of 2 plus 3, and minus 1, which is 2 minus 3, which we've returned up here. Cool. So in this video, we have looked at the topic of functions within Go. We've looked at how we can declare functions that take in parameters, and we've also looked at functions that return values or multiple values, and then how we can handle them and do things like ignore values if we don't want to assign them to anything.